Some of us leave behind great works of art, others leave empires and foundations, and some leave a legacy from a few small objects. Piecing together a life from pictures, documents, and an ornately embellished cigar box can illuminate an experience shared by many, the experience of Norwegian immigration to America. Through the story of Lars Martin Askeland, owner of these objects, we can come to better understand Scandinavian immigration to America in the late 19th and early 20th century, and in particular the experiences of single male immigrants. Each immigrant has their own story, but one commonality exists. They all helped form the dynamic society and diverse culture that would come to be called America. Before arriving at their future homeland, these immigrants were forced to say goodbye to the life and the land that they had known. Between 1820 to 1925, more than 850,000 Norwegians migrated to the United States. Most of these immigrants came between 1840 and 1915. From 1900 until 1910, around 190,000 Norwegians moved to America. Many of these Norwegians settled in the upper Midwest. Chicago and Minneapolis were popular destinations for urban Norwegians. Overall, more than 3 million people in the United States today can claim Norwegian heritage. Poor economic conditions, overpopulation, and limited jobs in an economy that was inadaptable to population expansion caused many Norwegians to leave their homeland and move to the United States. Norwegian immigrants were drawn to America by rich soil in the Midwest, religious freedom, and the ability to maintain the rural farming lifestyle, which would not have been possible if the poor farmer simply migrated to bigger cities in Norway. Thus, in the United States, Norwegians were able to maintain their traditional way of life. In 1825, they first settled in Illinois, but in the 1830s, immigrants moved on to Wisconsin. While in their new homes, the settlers wrote America letters and convinced others in Norway to follow. In the 1850s, Norwegians began to settle in Minnesota. Immigrants tended to settle where other Norwegian immigrants were. They were able to settle with their friends, neighbors, and family, thus creating communities that consisted of some of the same people as their communities did in Norway. Later, Norwegians from other locations also settled in these areas. Many immigrants were young, and as a group consisted of an equal number of males and females. After the 1880s, many urban Norwegians became attracted to jobs in the urban areas of the United States. At this time, fewer families and more single immigrants came to work as laborers in the industrial centers. Although Lars Martin immigrated in 1906, he continued the earlier trend of rural migration. Lars Martin Nielsen was born in Osterøy in House Parish, Norway, on August 25, 1883, to parents Niels Johannessen and Kari Olsdatter. The parish of House is located in Hordaland County on Norway's western coast and was then largely an agricultural area with a population that reached 182,000 in 1890. Lars Martin had 5 siblings. 2 of them immigrated to the United States. The first was his brother Johannes, who immigrated in 1891. The second was his sister Britta, who immigrated in 1899. Lars Martin grew up on the farm of a family named Askeland. After his father died, Lars Martin assumed the surname Askeland. His old report cards indicate that Lars Martin was a bright student, as suggested in this 1902 document.
He has very good ability and has a big yearning to learn, and he's going to pursue a further education. But his father is dead and his mother has no means to support him. Must I on the best recommend him to receive the best help the school can offer.
The 1900 Norwegian census lists Lars Martin employed as a service boy. However, he is most likely an apprentice to a blacksmith, as indicated in his immigration papers. At this time, the Norwegian economy could not support the continuing population expansion. Hence, many unemployed workers found immigration to be an answer to their problems. Those who wished to immigrate from Norway were required to obtain certificates from both the police and the state church. Lars Martin's police document, dated June 6, 1906, lists his date and place of birth along with his occupation and current residence. His church document is dated June 8, 1906, and lists much of the same information as the police records, but includes baptism and confirmation dates.
Lars Martin Nilsen Askeland of the parents farm Nils Johansen and Kari Olsæter is born 25th of August 1883 and baptized 2nd of September the same year. Confirmed 9th of October 1898 with evidence and very good knowledge of religion. His world capability is very good, which Hans Kirkebog writes under.
Lars Martin immigrated to the United States in 1906. He was one of a mass number of immigrants who made up the third wave of immigration from Norway to the United States during this era. In the late spring of 1906, he made his way to Bergen, the closest port to House, and brought a ticket for America. In Bergen, Lars Martin obtained passage to Liverpool, England, where he embarked on the Cedric, a ship belonging to the White Star Lines. White Star Lines built the SS Cedric in 1902. The Cedric quickly gained a reputation for being one of the best steamers of its time. It was over 680 feet long and was able to attain a top speed of 16 knots. The Cedric could accommodate 365 first class, 160 second class, and 2,352 third class passengers. It is likely that Lars Martin traveled as a third class passenger. The Cedric's main route was from Liverpool to New York, a journey which typically lasted 10 days. After his journey on the Cedric, Lars Martin landed in New York and passed through Ellis Island. Ellis Island served as a gateway to the United States for nearly 12 million immigrants from 1892 through 1954. Once Lars disembarked from the Cedric, he, along with other third-class passengers, was tagged with a number for the medical and legal exams that were to follow. The main purpose of the medical examinations was to prevent immigrants who would become burdensome to society from entering the United States. The new immigrants were also given basic intelligence tests. Once inspections were over, the immigrants were free to begin their new life in America. Lars Martin arrived in the United States when he was 23. The majority of immigrants who came to the United States were between the ages of 18 and 30. Lars was a part of the third wave of Norwegian immigrants. After the immigrants began their new lives in the United States, many of them traveled westward. Many became farmers and laborers, like Lars Martin. New immigrants tended to settle in areas where there was a high concentration of settlers like themselves. Lars Martin traveled from New York to Kendall County, Illinois, in order to join his sister Britta and her husband Hans Foss. Britta and Hans were married in December of 1900 and had 3 children by the time Lars Martin joined them in 1906. According to the 1910 federal census, Lars Martin worked as their hired hand. His move to Illinois was not permanent, and in February 1911, he relocated to Grygla, Minnesota, which is on the eastern border of Marshall County, where his childhood friend Sivert Askeland had already established himself. Marshall County, covering an area of 1,675 square miles, is in the northwestern part of Minnesota, bordering the Red River of the North. In 1910, about half the area was farmland, and by 1935, this increased to over 75%. Factories for making cheese and butter were also established in the area. Amongst this farmland sat the community of Grygla. In the July of 1924, the St. Paul Dispatch included a description of Grygla for its readers.
About 90 miles northeast of Thief River Falls, as the crow flies, squats Grygla, Minnesota, a hummock in a vast peat bog with its bank, its creamery, its movie house, general store, and 200 inhabitants when they are all at home. Grygla is not famous, never has been, and probably never will be.
To its own inhabitants, the town was known, and still is known, as the biggest town of its size. Grygla farmers raised poultry, hogs, and sheep, and grew corn, alfalfa, potatoes, and winter rye, but the biggest commodity in the area was dairy. Grygla had its own creamery and shipped stock and produce to Thief River Falls and the nearest railroad. Lars Martin Askeland acquired some land. It was unfortunately not very productive due to its location on a peat bog and tamarack swamp. Although Lars Martin owned the land, he did not farm it, and instead spent time as a seasonal planting and harvest worker in the Dakotas, specifically in Petersburg, North Dakota, returning to Grygla in the wintertime. In these long winters, he spent time with his friend Sivert Askeland, who was a witness to his naturalization application in 1918, which was finalized on June 27, 1925. The pages of the Grygla Eagle illustrate that Lars Martin was indeed a member of the community in the early 1920s. Instances of Lars Martin's social life appear in such notices in the Grygla Eagle.
Grygla Eagle, March 24, 1922. Martin Johnson, Martin Askeland, Martin Sandsmark, and Martin Sorensen enjoyed a few games of whist at the P.A. Nordby home Wednesday evening. Which of the Martins won the game? Grygla Eagle, April 6, 1923. Curtis Nordby and Martin Askeland spent Saturday evening at the Colbin Olsen home.
The Colbin Olsen home was a frequent stop for Lars Martin as he pursued Colbin's daughter, Sina. However, Sina rejected his advances, saying that when she got married, she was going to marry a man. As one of Lars Martin's friends stated about him,
"Yeah, he was a little too short. That was his problem. The women didn't like him that short."
According to his naturalization documents, Lars Martin was 5 feet 4 inches tall, weighing 125 pounds. A friend also indicated that he loved to read westerns and he apparently had a fascination with cowboys. No further evidence exists that Lars Martin pursued another relationship. Likewise, Sina never married. In Grygla, Lars Martin enjoyed some prosperity. He had a 1925 Ford Model T that he used to drive back and forth between Grygla and Grand Forks, North Dakota. Lars Martin likely spent the 1930s and 1940s working and moving between Grand Forks and Grygla. In 1951 and 1953, he was listed in the directories as living in the Olin Hotel. While in Grand Forks, Lars Martin worked in a potato factory, as a handyman in the Rhine Hotel and a clerk in the City Hotel. Lars Martin paid rent to the Olin Hotel until May 26, 1954. By the fall of 1954, however, Lars Martin had changed his residence to St. Anne's Guest Home, a basic care facility run by nuns, not skilled nurses. The residents who chose this facility often had nowhere else to go, for they lacked funds and were often on social services. They were not bedridden, but they had their basic needs taken care of because they could not live independently. The last known address of Lars Martin Nielsen Askeland was listed in his obituary as 512 4th Avenue South. He died in 1955 in a Grand Forks hospital at the age of 71. Today, what remains of Lars Martin Askeland is a box. This box is full of pictures and documents, but most importantly, it is full of memories. They are memories of a man, long forgotten, who left his Norwegian homeland for a new continent, his future uncertain. This box also contains the memories of the Norwegian immigrants as a whole, the perils they encountered, the work they performed, the isolation they felt in a new land with strange customs. They have long gone, but their impact upon the United States endures. They changed the face of this land, they worked it, they improved it, and they died on it. Although a long-forgotten box may be the only direct evidence of their existence, their legacy persists. This legacy must be acknowledged by this generation and all future generations, not thrust back into a dusty closet and forgotten. Lars Martin Askeland is this legacy.